all the session today. I was here for the whole session yesterday. And I keep getting surprised by the work that I see. I mean, I've been looking at photography, how photography's evolved in Bangladesh over many, many years. And certainly one of the things that's very easy for me to tell you is that there are times when I look back to see work that the finest photographers in Bangladesh were doing. And today, it's wonderful to see that new, fresh, young photographers are doing work of that sort of caliber, which is fabulous. But that must also be placed into context, because I don't think you can take a photograph and evaluate it in vacuum. It has to be seen in the context of where it is placed. We've recently been editing the work of several very fine photographers. They were young when they were taking these pictures. These are photographers who were here in 1971. Pretty much a who's who of photography. John McCullin, Raghu Rai, David Burnett, Bruno Barbe, Mark Prabhu, Mary Ellen Mark. Anyone who's someone in the world of photojournalism was practically here in Bangladesh in 1971. They produced very strong images. But if I were to look at those images themselves and compare it with work that is being produced today, they would not, many of them would not stand out. But I don't think that's important. I think those were photographs produced at a particular moment in history, and those pictures need to be seen in the context of that history, in the context of the visual culture that existed at any particular time. And that is the only way you can judge any art form in terms of how it relates to the particular environment in which it is produced. And I say that for a very different reason. I'm not actually going to talk about photography. I'll talk about something very different. I'll talk about youth, which is one of the things you talked about, you mentioned. You're young people, 20s, early 30s, that sort of thing. Now, in the evolutionary process, some very interesting things happen, and human beings are very different from other life forms for a very different reason. Because in other life forms, generally, the animals, whoever they be, live not very much beyond the peak of their biological performance. That's quite unusual. Human beings, us, you are at the peak of your biological performance. But you will hopefully live to be twice, thrice, 4 times the age that you are today. And that changes the dynamics of how it is, because that peak of our process generally relates to procreation. Animals of any form, their main job in a biological sense is to procreate. Human beings have gone far beyond that. Of course, we do procreate, but that is not the point of the exercise. For all of us, procreation, if it happens, happens at a particular early stage in our lives, and we go on to do a whole lot of other things at a later stage. And one very interesting shift that takes place is that the cerebral process, our thinking, continues to mature for a long period beyond the time that this is for you. Now you have adrenaline flowing through your brains, everything about your physique is at peak performance. But you will all adapt in a very, very different way. You, at a later stage, I mean, already you are different from the way human beings were a long time back. At your sort of age, thousands of years ago, people would have had families, they would have reared, they would have responsibilities. You, by and large, are free of many of those responsibilities. You don't, at the moment, have to probably tend to families. You don't, at the moment, have mortgages to worry about. You don't, at the moment, have huge families to support or any of those sort of things. And that puts you in a particular position which I'd like you to reflect upon, because believe me, this stage in your life will not come back. Over a period of time, all of that baggage tell you about, one way or another, will come. Your parents will get older, you'll need to look after them, you perhaps will have families, you'll have liabilities, you'll have baggage to carry that you do not, in relative terms, have now. And that will involve a loss of freedom that you might not realize you have today. And that is something to cherish. You are at a unique point in your lives when you have a freedom that you will never get again. You will get into a job, you will get into some sort of thing. Even the education system. I mean, there are some very interesting things that have happened as a result of changes in education systems. The United States, for instance, today, someone who's graduated from the United States will probably, by the time he or she has graduated, have a debt of about $100,000. So, the first thing that that person will want to do is find some way in which he or she can repay that financial debt. That has some very interesting bearing on individuals, because one of the first things that it does is it means people stop taking risks. They play it safe. They no longer are adventurous, because they then have taken on a burden. At a time when those pressures were not there, they could do a whole lot of things. But suddenly when you have a bank debt to pay of $100,000, you're no longer quite as cavalier, as free, as enterprising as you might be. And because that is a rare situation, I'd like you to reflect at this point in time, because this really is the time when you can do things. At a later stage, you will get wiser, hopefully. You will gain more knowledge, hopefully. There's a whole lot of things you will gain, but you will have lost freedom. And that is the one very, very precious entity that I do not want you to forget. And the one thing I would like you to do, I've looked at work, I've looked at good work, and of course, work evolves. I mean, Bangladesh now, anyone who's growing up in this environment will perforce produce good pictures, because you're in an environment which is constantly pushing you. You're looking at good pictures, you're breathing good pictures, you're surrounded by fine photographers. I mean, in the next 2 months, we will have David Burnett, we will have Eugene Richards, we will have Philip Blenkinsop, we'll have Frank Fournier coming to work with us at Pathshala. You know, some of the greatest photographers around who will be with us, one way or another. This is a wonderful opportunity. Even here, I mean, I look at people like Shibli and all the teachers that you've had. These are people who've grown up through this system. When they started, it wasn't quite the same, but today, you're surrounded by very fine photographers, talking good photography, breathing good photography, seeing good photography. There's festivals, there's all sorts of things. You're immersed in an environment that just by breathing that air, you will become, in some ways, better photographers. But, of course, this photographic environment is what you've got to compete against. Everyone is now a better photographer. So you, to make your mark, need to be that much better. You need to be that much more different. You need to push yourself that much harder. You need to take on more than others have done, because for you to shine, if the level is there, you have to get that much higher up. There's a very interesting statement in Alice in Wonderland, where Alice is talking to the Queen, and the Queen says, "This is a strange kind of country. Here, you have to walk just to stay still. To get anywhere, you've got to run twice as fast." That's where you are. You have to run twice as fast just to get ahead. If you're standing, you're actually moving backwards. And it's worth remembering. And I say that because while I've looked at good work, one of the things I've not seen sufficiently, and perhaps that is also what we need to reflect upon as teachers, as a school, whether our influence is so overbearing that it prevents you from doing certain things. And this is a question we need to ask ourselves, because what I would like you to do, what I would have liked to see, are things, not necessarily better photographs, but someone thinking out of the box. someone being that much more adventurous, someone taking a lot more risks, someone trying things out, which perhaps never worked, but was worth trying all the same. It's like being in love, you know. It'll hurt, it'll be traumatic, it'll be difficult, it'll be painful, but it's worth doing all the same. And unless you've done it, you've missed out on something very wonderful. And I think in the photographic process, that is something you need to take on. You need to, at this point, spread your arms, spread your wings, and go out and try things for the heck of it, because this is the one chance you will have. You are at the peak of your performance. If at this time you've not taken those risks, when will you take them in your life? Not when you've got all that baggage, not when you're settled, not when you've got a steady job, not when you've got to worry about insurance, not when you worry about mortgages to pay, not when you've got kids to look after, not when your family is older and you have to look after them. All of those things will limit your risk-taking ability. This is one window in your life. Take it, run with it, push yourself, be adventurous, break every rule in the book. I remember yesterday one of the students talking about, the fact that he tried drugs, he did a few other things. We do that. That is also the age when you do all of that. But really, those, to me, are very minor adventures. Drugs, sex, all of those sort of things are fun. You do it, you try it, whatever, what they. But they are very tiny things. It's intellectually, if you're able to push yourself to the extreme frontiers, if you're racing away where everything else is blurred around you, intellectually, that is the only time you can really streak ahead. And it's worth doing that. The rewards are fascinating, it's scary, it's precarious, you will make mistakes, you will fall, you will hurt yourself, do it all the same. And that's the only thing. I have nothing to say about photography, but I do have to say something about life. This is it. Grab it, hold it, run with it, and make your life count. Otherwise, what the heck is it? I mean, we've been born, we've grown up, we've had a few kids, we've had a house, we've died, we have not lived. The only time you have lived is when you've gone beyond yourself, when you've pushed yourself to the absolute limits of your ability, and perhaps beyond your ability. And that's the only place to strive for, beyond your own ability. Look for it. Thank you.